Okay, last week we talked about how the X-Men movies aren't very good outside of these two, and this one if you squint and pretend it's 2002. And the best possible illustration for how the series has largely failed both as drama in its own right and as an adaptation still remains, in my opinion, the bungling of the Doc Phoenix storyline in X-Men 3 The Last Stand, which manages to not only flub the best X-Men story from the best X-Men creative team during the best X-Men era, but also simply falls apart as a cinematic story in its own right. The new X-Men movies very much want you to love them again by continuously reminding you that Part 3 has been deleted from continuity and that the most recent film, the nigh-unwatchable X-Men Apocalypse, is even in a big hurry to telegraph that they've got a new Jean Grey, and thus that they're itching to tell that story again and get it right this time. Except all indications already point to them making all the same fucking mistakes. Just so we're all on the same page, the Doc Phoenix story in the comics goes like this. The X-Men have an adventure in outer space, Jean picks up some kick-ass new powers, they meet some creepy new villains who turn her evil, then she goes even more evil and uses those new powers to turn into a giant bird made of fire and go around blowing up planets, which pisses off the X-Men's various alien allies. There's a big old fight about it, Jean has to die, then a bunch of nonsense about clones and body swapping goes down so she comes back like 100 more times until nobody cares anymore, but that first stretch, honestly, really good. Now, the X-Men movies thus far seem to think that the important part of that story is the big bird made of fire and nothing else, and they're always in a big hurry to get there. So in Part 3, they say she had some Carrie shit happening as a kid, and that's what causes it, and now in Apocalypse, the new teenage Jean Grey is already having crazy nightmares, and the other kids treat her like a weirdo, and damn it, they're already fucking it up, and no, I don't mean it's because it's unlikely they'll ever do the outer space stuff. You see, you don't have to do the outer space stuff properly to do Dark Phoenix, because that's just aesthetic plot details. You do have to understand the character, what the story means for the character, and the subtext that underpins the whole shebang, and thus far, the movies do not. Now, just a word before continuing laying this out. Since we're talking about subtext in old X-Men comics, some of that implicitly means we're really talking about pre-1990s youth culture sexual politics, which means some of it is gonna sound a wee bit politically incorrect. Consider yourselves warned. Okay, so the thing about Jean Grey as a comic book character originally is she's boring. In fact, prior to the Phoenix story, she was probably the least interesting female character in the Marvel Universe in that era. On the original X-Men team, she was little more than the girl, and when they added more women to the team, she wasn't even as novel as that. Her mutation didn't offer many tangible drawbacks, i.e. she could pass as normal, she was overall well-adjusted, and she was a quintessential good girl, because being the least interesting woman in Marvel Comics means also being the least sexualized woman in Marvel Comics because comics. Right down to the outwardly chaste, respectable, let's hold hands at the country club until after the wedding romance with the equally milquetoast Cyclops. She's Sandy from Grease, she's Annette from Cruel Intentions, she's as pure as the driven snow and exciting as room temperature water. The Phoenix Saga and the whole long build-up into it is thusly all about making her interesting by adding unexpected new layers to her persona in the most appropriately melodramatic way possible. A good girl goes bad storyline. Yes, one with a giant evil bird made of fire, but that's just the outward manifestation. Remember, pre-1990s youth culture sexual politics is the order of the day here, which means we're in a good girls don't, bad girls do territory. So thematically, the crux of this story is that Miss Perfect gradually reveals herself to be a dirty, dirty, dirty girl. Don't say I didn't warn you. That's what that whole thing with Wolverine was about. I mean, yes, having the gruff wildcard guy hung up on the stuck-up classy chick is its own Bluto-Blutarski Mandy Pepperidge thing, but the implication as that B-story rolled out that maybe Jean wasn't 100% opposed to the idea, that was pretty much the first indication ever that there was anything remotely sexual about her character's persona. Again, old comic book, so there's a lot of read between the lines stuff going on. Remember, Wolverine in those days was basically the masculine sexual id personified. He's mean, he's aggressive, he drinks, he smokes, he's hairy and bulgy, he's full-throttle emotional livewire, he's ready for action at a moment's notice, and his main superpowers are endurance and being unbreakably rigid at all times. Original comic book Wolverine was basically a giant walking hard-on, and Jean Grey, maybe being kinda into that, was pretty much brand new information about her as a character. Then the Phoenix business happens, and well, just look at how the artists tend to visualize her exponentially increased powers. Wide eyes, elaborate physical gesture, wild hair, more occasional than previous come-hither smile, you get the picture. Hell, they even gave her one of those outfit redesigns where there's a piece of loose clothing worn on top of the costume to make the spandex look even more like naked skin. See also Miss Marvel and Psylocke. Then the Hellfire Club stuff kicks in and we get the first reveal of Evil Jean as the Black Queen, who looks like this. I mean, holy shit, right? Like I said, the Phoenix Saga is primarily a good girl becomes a bad girl story, and the unveiling of Jean Grey as the Black Queen is what you call subtext becoming just text. Imagine landing unspoiled on that panel as a kid reading it in the late 70s, when the target audience for comics was still like 12-year-olds, right? You could only assume this caused a lot of surprising, half-understood emotional physiological responses, which have a lot to do with why this storyline was so goddamn memorable and so firmly cemented Chris Claremont's X-Men as the adolescent angst standard bearer of that moment in comics. I mean, if you're gonna do the female sexuality equals power metaphor, i.e. Jean starts suddenly having more, power, and it's cool at first because now she's more fun, but then she starts experimenting with her power in increasingly uncomfortable ways until her power is out of control and burns up everything around it, in keeping with the decidedly pre-1990 teenage boy view of power that this is all being filtered through. Going full tilt Angel is the centerfold and turning the goodest of the good girls into a kinky dominatrix who acts out sicko dark fantasy torture on her former teammate is about as hot as you can lean into that premise, even if you are just doing a long-form inside jokey tribute to a famous episode of the old Avengers TV show. Yeah, and for you youngsters, believe it or not, that right there is Lady Tyrell. I know, right? For lack of a better word, that whole business with the Hellfire Club and everything leading up to it in terms of story and especially the themes and subtext is the essential heart of the Phoenix Saga. Jean's dark digressions, turning her into an evil planet-killing version of the Firebird thing that ultimately has to be destroyed and her along with it is really just the fireworks that mark that climax. And yet both times they've tried to do this in the movies, they just want to rush and skip through all that interesting stuff and get to the big stupid Firebird. Like that's the important thing everyone wants to fucking see. So instead of this richly thematic, symbolism-laden, tons to unpack character-centric storyline, we get the X-Men 3 version where, oh, Jean was basically Carrie when she was a kid, but she got better and then she's bad again, which is super boring and ditches all the great character stuff that can occur between her and everyone else in favor of just doing a special effects blowout. And in X-Men Apocalypse, the idea that the new Jean is already showing Phoenix signs, so instead of being the classy, popular, kind of boring chick at the Xavier school, she's a weirdo and the other kids are already scared of her. So where's the storyline there? Spoiler, there isn't one. They're just gonna rush to the damn climax again because all anyone apparently wants to see is the big flaming bird, oh, and Wolverine being sad because who can forget about fucking Wolverine at all times. Now, obviously, you can't do the comic book version of this exactly. There's not a lot of room for the X-Men movies to go to space, and the posh mutant eyes wide shut S&M cult probably isn't gonna fly today, granted, but there are surely variations on those details that could explore the same thematic territory and the same kind of character development. Screenwriters who genuinely appreciate the material they've been handed could pull that off. A director of genuine vision who gave a shit would demand that they do it, and a studio that actually wanted to put out the best possible product they could long-term would support that decision. Unfortunately, the X-Men movies haven't had any of those things for quite some time, and that's why we're not getting a good Dark Phoenix movie anytime soon.